What's going on, guys, and welcome back to WWE Network and Show, where I, Graham G.S. Matthews, break down all the original content I watch on the WWE Network. Today we're talking the Adrian Street Imagine What I Could Do to You special that aired on the network before NXT UK TakeOver Cardiff on Saturday afternoon. Great stuff. I had no idea this was a thing until maybe that day. I didn't watch TakeOver Live. I was out that day in Chicago before All Out. I didn't end up watching that show until Sunday morning. So I didn't end up watching this until just today, Tuesday morning. But this was great. Well worth checking out. Only about 20 minutes in length. And if you see this and you're like, what the hell is this? It's kind of like what they did with Nigel McGuinness about, a year ago, maybe around the same time as the last UK TakeOver, where they focus on a UK wrestling legend. And this one being Adrian Street. Obviously, people know Nigel because he's in WWE right now, was in, Ring of Honor, Impact, blah, blah, blah. Wrestled all over the world. Adrian Street, I had no idea who this guy was before I saw this special. But after watching it, I kind of want to go out of my way to watch matches of his because he sounds incredibly fascinating and the story of his career is awesome. So again, only about 20 minutes in length, well worth checking out. So to kick off the special, Adrian Street says that he had never had a real conversation with his father ever. I guess his dad was a prisoner of war in Japan until he was 5 years old, which is incredible. And then his dad put him in the coal mines to work there when he was 15 because he was from South Wales, and I guess that's a big coal mine country, something like that, or wherever he's from anyway. So he worked a lot in the coal mines. But during that time, he bought a lot of wrestling magazines, boxing, stuff like that, and he fell in love with wrestling. And he knew at that point that was what he wanted to do. His dad and all the other coal miners said that he wouldn't make it, and Adrian said, hey, I'm going to London tomorrow to start my journey in becoming a professional wrestler. And his dad said, oh, he'll be back. He likes his mom's home cooking. He won't make it out there. He'll be back very, very soon. Obviously, he used that as fuel to prove them wrong and to succeed. I guess Buddy Rogers was one of his early favorites, obviously the first ever WWE World Heavyweight Champion. And from that, he adopted the Nature Boy nickname, and he wanted to live up to it any way that he could. So he got a powder blue jacket and, dressed all up, looking kind of feminine, feminine, I guess is the right word. I was trying to find the right word to use there, feminine. And he expected a big reaction when he went out because he had this long blonde hair. He had the look of a superstar. But when he went out there, he thought the place would go crazy like they would for Buddy Rogers or anyone else who kind of had the long blonde hair and looked like a star. He got a completely different reaction with complete silence at first, and then people saying ooh, look at that woman, oh, aren't you pretty? Why don't you give me a kiss? Blah, 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 kind of teasing him. And he embraced the boos. He thought it was a great reaction. Maybe not the reaction that he initially wanted, but it was a big reaction nonetheless. And his opponent went along with it. They had a great reaction. They had a great, a great match. The crowd went along with it too. And he just kept pushing the envelope more and more and more with every match that he had, and started to add more elements to his character, a lot like Goldust. This was the early incarnation of Goldust. Again, I've never heard of Adrian Street, which is amazing. I mean, maybe I'm just ignorant, but this is what Goldust was in the mid-90s, and Adrian Street was doing this far before he was. In the maybe 70s, definitely 80s, he was well ahead of his time. Even Goldust was well ahead of his time, but Adrian Street even more so. So after getting that reaction, he knew he wanted more of that reaction. So we hear from Johnny Sain, who said that he was blown away by, obviously the NXT UK general manager. He would see Adrian Street in action and go, it took the guy 5 minutes to lock up in a wrestling hold with his opponent. But that's what made him special, though, because he was so different than anyone else in that period of wrestling. Johnny Sain even said that he was well before his time. William Regal called him a trailblazer. He was super high in Adrian Street. Just from hearing him talk, you could tell that William Regal was a big Adrian Street fan, and that he really means it when he calls him a trailblazer. But anyway, Adrian Street says that he liked the idea of mystery and contrast, so he started bringing a female valet to the ring with him. And by doing that, it would keep people questioning, not what his sexuality was as a wrestler, but kind of sort of that, because people would be like, why is he bringing a female to the ring with him? I thought he was gay. They didn't say that here on this special, but that's essentially what he was implying. Kind of like with Goldust, where he was this very effeminate character. He was androgynous. That's the way that Vince McMahon, described it to him when he first came up with the character many years ago. But then he started bringing down Marlene into the ring with him. So it's like, okay, is he into guys? Is he into women? Is he into both? What's going on here? And obviously back then, the world was not as progressive as it is today. So for anyone to come off as like effeminate or gay or whatever back in the 80s, even 90s when Goldust did, it was a super big deal. And a lot of people saw that as a bad thing. Obviously today it's no big deal because that's obviously normal, as it should be. But back then it was a completely different time period. It was a completely different era. Anyway, so I like that. I like that mindset where he wanted to keep people guessing. He wanted to remain relevant. He wanted people to still talk about him. So in order to do that, he was able to bring down a female valet to the ring with him and keep people guessing, all right, what's his motive here? What's going on with him? Let's keep asking questions as to what he's all about. I thought that was really, really smart. So anyway, he continued to wear more and more things on his head, from like pigtails and then feathers and stuff like that, to make him look taller than he actually was. He wasn't really that tall, I don't think, but with the entire getup. Like Macho Man Randy Savage, I mean, is obviously a very muscular guy, but like in terms of being tall, he really wasn't that tall. But between, the crown and when he was King Macho Man Randy Savage, and then when he had the cape, he looked way more larger than life than he actually was. And Adrian Street had that mentality long before anyone else, for the most part. He also says, or rather that Road Dogg says that he set a precedent. Adrian Street did with the gimmick and the wrestling and everything else. Terry Taylor said, he had this great gimmick and, he would prounce around the ring for 10 minutes and not really put on a wrestling hold until halfway through the match, but he was an incredible wrestling machine at the same time. And that when he would lock in these holds, again, it was unlike anything that anyone had ever seen up to that point. And speaking of Terry Taylor, William Regal said that the match of Adrian Street's that stands out more than any other is the match that he had with Terry Taylor. I don't know when it was or where it was or on what show or whatever. We see footage of it. But Regal says the match that he had with Terry Taylor was one of the best that he ever had. And Taylor even admitted, because we hear from Terry Taylor, who obviously works at the Performance Center in Orlando, he says that he didn't even see his opponent, Adrian Street, until he got to the ring. So he didn't know what he looked like. He didn't know what the match was going to be. He didn't know what the hell the deal was until he got to the ring that night. And he was taken back initially because this guy was doing stuff, jumping around the ring and doing all this weird stuff. It wasn't really what he was used to. But they ended up having a great match. And in the end, it was for a championship. I forgot what championship it was. But in the end, Street kissed him, which was, again, completely unprecedented at that point, and then pinned him for the victory, which is such a smart thing. Like, even Terry Taylor said, I think I was the first person in history to get kissed and then lose a championship. Because it's so smart, because, in character, you're taken back by this guy fucking kissing you out of nowhere, and then he pins you because you're kind of out of it. In wrestling lingo here, because obviously if that happened in real life, that's just ridiculous. But within the realm of wrestling, suspending your disbelief for a couple seconds here, it makes complete sense. And it was a great finish, and even Regal thought the same exact thing. Street was then told by Eddie Gilbert, maybe after that match, that he would go on to have a program with Macho Man Randy Savage, and he said that he enjoyed it a lot. And they don't really go into more detail about it other than that, but we do see clips of him working with Macho Man. I don't know where that would have been, maybe in the UK, obviously not in WWE. I don't know what time period that was, but that's pretty cool. So he then won the European Middleweight Championship. And at that point, the newspapers, all the journalists, were calling his house back in England to interview him about the title win. So what he wanted to do, to take a picture for the front of the paper and everyone else, all the newsstands and whatnot, he wanted to take a picture at his original home in the coal mine with his dad and all the other coal miners, because this was his way of showing them that he made it, showing his dad and all the other people who doubted him that he made it, and kind of like a fuck you, because he kind of like flipped them off. He kind of flipped off the camera here. That's kind of what this was to his dad and all the other coal miners, showing them that, hey, I made it, so fucking deal that I'm famous and you're not. So Flash Morgan Webster, who was also interviewed over the course of this special, said that it was a sign of defiance, and that it was also a beacon of hope for a guy like him that he can make it if he wanted to. Regal said that, he was a huge star at the time of all these giants like Andre the Giant, Hulk Hogan, all these other larger-than-life personalities, yet Street was still able to stand out and make himself a star through what he was doing over in the UK at that point in time. And Regal also says that he was so far ahead of his game that he would have been a big star had he ever gone over to WWE. Robbie Brookside says that he believes that Street was honored to be asked to be a coach at the NXT UK Performance Center. Now, I don't know if it was like a 1-week thing like they did with Chris Sabin a couple weeks ago, or if he's there full-time as a coach now. I'm not sure. I think it's full-time as a coach at the UKPC. I'm not sure it was like a 1-week camp or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was a full-time thing, which is pretty cool. But Street said that he was speechless when he found out the news and that he's very excited for the future of UK wrestling, saying that he believes that we are approaching a golden age of UK professional wrestling with all the ways that they're being taught and the amount of talent out there and everything else. He's really excited for the future of pro wrestling. And Regal says that there was nobody in the world doing anything like that at the time that he came up in the business. And Street says to close it out that it was his dream to be the best wrestler that he could be in the entire world. And he got to accomplish that dream. And he wrestled for 57 years, which is fucking unbelievable. That's crazy. And he said that if you believe in yourself, you can accomplish anything. So, some words of wisdom to close out the Adrian Street Imagine What I Could Do to You special here on the WWE Network. Great stuff, like I said. Be sure to check it out on the network. If you've never heard of the guy, like I never did, it's still well worth checking out. A fascinating look at one of the greatest legends, apparently, in the history of the United Kingdom wrestling scene. The guy was well ahead of his time. I learned a lot about Adrian Street and all the other, UK wrestling legends like Regal and Brookside and Terry Taylor and all these other people. It was a real interesting watch. I wish I could have watched it before TakeOver on Saturday. He did appear in the crowd at the show, which is cool. But I finally got to catch up on it. I enjoyed it for what it was. Be sure to check it out as well on the WWE Network. As for me, folks, hopefully you guys enjoyed my review of Adrian Street, Imagine What I Could Do to You on the WWE Network. Be sure to like this review, drop a comment, share the video, and just subscribe to the channel for more daily content. We'll be back on Friday here on Network and Chill. More content throughout the week, but here on Network and Chill, my review of the day of SummerSlam, I must say 1999, 2019 from last month. That aired after TakeOver on Saturday, so I finally caught up on that as well. That'll be a much shorter review, not a lot of stuff to discuss there, but that'll be up on Friday here on the channel, and then my review of Straight Up Steve Austin, Episode 4 with Becky Lynch, going up a little later than usual, but that's just because we had a bunch of new content go up on the network in the last couple days. So anyway, guys, have a great rest of your week. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.